The church doors slammed in the wind, and silence swallowed the little town of Dry Creek. On the altar, under the unfinished arc of sunlight pouring through stained glass, Thomas Hale stood alone. The pews were still full, eyes refusing to meet his, whispers rippling like snakes in the tall grass. His bride was gone, run away before the vows, leaving her bouquet wilting on the floorboards. He didn't speak, he didn't storm. He simply picked up the flowers, set them carefully on the pulpit, and walked out. Outside, the horses stamped impatiently at the posts, townsfolk shifting as if the shame might blow over them too. No one stopped him. They all knew. A man left at the altar in the west was a man marked. Years passed. The Hale Ranch didn't just survive, it thrived. Thomas turned solitude into steel. His cattle drove strong, his fences never sagged, and the men who worked under him respected the silence of their employer, a silence heavy as the desert noon. Where others sought saloons and companionship, Thomas kept to the land. His heart had been buried on that church day, and he had never gone back to dig it up. But Dry Creek changed. The war came and went, leaving widows with eyes too tired to weep. Drought bent men to breaking. Old storefronts emptied. The church roof caved, and the laughter of dances was a ghost no one bothered chasing. By the time Thomas was nearing 40, his ranch stood like an island in a dying sea, self-sufficient, but lonely as a graveyard at midnight. It was late autumn when the knock came, not hurried, not desperate, slow, deliberate. Thomas wiped his hands on a rag, stepped across the plank floor, and opened the door. There she was, Clara Whitfield, the woman who had left him at the altar 15 years ago. Her dress was travel-worn, her face thinner, but her eyes the same. In her arms, she carried no bouquet this time, only a carpet bag, worn at the seams. "I heard you're needing a cook," she said, her voice steady though her hands trembled. For a long moment, Thomas said nothing. The past rose between them, heavy as thunderclouds. His men shuffled in the bunkhouse yard, pretending not to look, but watching all the same. Finally, Thomas stepped back, leaving the doorway open. Clara hesitated, clutching the bag tighter. And just then, from the yard, a voice called, sharp, warning, "Boss, rider coming fast down the trail." Thomas's eyes flicked past her to the horizon, where dust was already rising. The rider's silhouette cut sharp against the reddening sky, galloping hard, like news itself was trying to outpace the dark. Thomas stepped onto the porch, arms crossed, his jaw set. Clara stood just behind him, hands clenched on the carpet bag as though bracing for judgment. The rider reined in at the gate, dust swirling around his boots. It was Daniel Cray, foreman of the North Pasture, sweat streaked down his temples. "Hale," he said, voice tight. "Word's spreadin' fast. Whitfield's back in town. Folks say she came knockin' at your door." His eyes darted to Clara, full of disbelief. "After what she done, you can't be thinkin'." "I ain't thinkin' anything yet," Thomas said, voice calm but sharp as a blade's edge. Clara swallowed. "Thomas, I didn't come here for pity. I came to work. I know how to cook for a crew. I can stretch flour when there's none left to stretch. I just need the chance." Her words hung in the air like smoke. The men in the yard shifted uncomfortably, glancing between one another. Some muttered under their breath. Forgiveness was a currency few carried in Dry Creek. Daniel spat into the dirt. "Boss, every man here remembers that day. You take her in, folks'll call you weak. They'll call us all weak." Thomas's eyes hardened. The ranch had survived because reputation guarded it as much as rifles. In the West, a man's pride was as binding as iron, and once bent, it didn't bend back. Yet here she stood, the woman who had cut him deepest, offering her hands in service. "Why now?" Thomas finally asked, eyes fixed on Clara. Her lips parted, then faltered, a silence longer than any sermon stretched. "Because I've nowhere else to go," she whispered. The men shifted again, some scowling, some softening. Thomas felt the weight of two choices pressed like millstones: turn her away and keep his pride untarnished, or take her in, risking whispers but reclaiming something long lost. Before he could speak, Daniel looked toward the ridge. His face went pale. "Riders," he muttered, "3 of 'em, comin' hard." Thomas turned. Dust was rising again, heavier, closer. Whoever they weren't bringing good tidings. Clara gripped the carpet bag tighter, voice barely a breath. "If they're who I think they are, you'll wish you never opened that door." The men froze. Thomas's hand brushed the revolver at his hip, and in that taut silence, the choice wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about survival. The three riders closed in, hooves pounding like war drums against the hard earth. Dust rose around them, swallowing the fading light. Thomas stepped off the porch, boots sinking into the yard dirt, his eyes never leaving the approaching figures. His men gathered near the bunkhouse, rifles half raised, waiting on his word. The riders slowed at the gate, fanning out like wolves circling. Their leader, a rangy man with a scar from cheek to chin, tipped his hat but didn't smile. "Evening, Hale," he drawled. "We're looking for a woman, Clara Whitfield. Folks say she came this way." Thomas didn't answer right off. He felt Clara tense behind him, her breath sharp as broken glass. "What business you got with her?" he asked evenly. The scarred man chuckled low. "Business ain't yours to question. She owes more than she can pay. We just come to collect." His eyes flicked toward Clara. "Ain't that right, darlin'?" Clara stepped forward, chin lifted despite the tremble in her hands. "You'll not drag me off like a dog. I earned my way. You know it." One of the men spat in the dirt. "Earned? You ran tabs from Deadwood to Tucson. Left men hungry, left debts hanging like nooses." The crew around Thomas bristled, muttering. Some looked at Clara with fresh suspicion, others with pity. Thomas said nothing. His silence was the fulcrum on which the moment teetered. The scarred man leaned in his saddle. "Step aside, Hale. You don't want this stain on your land. She's got no claim here." Thomas's hand hovered near his revolver, though he hadn't drawn it yet. His voice low and steady, carried across the yard. "This is Hale land. Nobody gets taken off it unless I say so." The words cracked through the air like a shot. His men straightened, rifles shouldered. The riders shifted uneasily, but their leader smirked, eyes cold as iron. "Then you're choosing to make her debt your own," he said. Thomas didn't blink. "Maybe I am." A beat of silence, heavy, suffocating. Then the scarred man's grin widened, mean and certain. "So be it. We'll come back tomorrow, Hale. Sun high. You hand her over, or we'll burn this place to ash." They wheeled their horses and thundered off, leaving only a cloud of dust and the echo of a threat too sharp to ignore. The yard fell silent. Clara's voice broke it, barely a whisper. "Thomas, you don't know what you've just done." Night fell heavy over the Hale ranch, stars burning sharp above the dark plains. The men lingered by the fire pits, talking low, glancing at Clara as if she were both curse and burden. Inside the ranch house, Thomas set a lantern on the kitchen table. Its glow painted Clara's face in weary lines, softer now than when she'd stood defiant at the door. She unpacked her bag without a word. A few dresses, a Bible with frayed edges, and a tin locket that clicked softly when she opened it. Inside was a faded sketch of her mother. Thomas caught the glint before she shut it fast. "You left me standing in front of half the county," Thomas finally said. His voice wasn't sharp, just tired. Clara's hands stilled. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then, in a voice low as a prayer, she said, "I was scared. Not of you, of what being tied down would mean. I thought I could chase something better, but all I found was men who wanted nothing but what they could take, and debts." Her words hung between them, heavy as lead. "You should have let me take that weight with you," Thomas said, though his eyes didn't leave the lantern flame. Clara's breath trembled. "I thought I'd ruin you. I thought maybe you'd be better off without me." The silence stretched, not hostile, but aching. Then Clara rose, moved to the stove, and set about cooking with what she found in the pantry: beans, salt pork, cornbread. The motions were practiced, steady. Thomas watched her in the lamplight, the same hands that once held flowers at an altar now stirring pots, mending something broken without speaking its name. When the food was ready, she set a plate before him. He hesitated, then took a bite. It tasted of old days, of Sunday suppers and promises half-remembered. "Your men won't follow you if you keep me here," Clara said quietly. "They'll turn." "They'll follow," Thomas answered, "not because of me, because of this land. It feeds 'em, keeps 'em alive." Her eyes lifted to his, glistening with a truth unspoken. "And you? What keeps you alive, Thomas?" The question lingered, unanswered. Outside, coyotes yipped under the moon, their cries sharp and wild. Inside, the two of them sat across the small wooden table, the lantern flame flickering between them, a fragile bridge over 15 years of silence. But beyond the glass, smoke rose faintly from the far ridge where riders were gathering again. Dawn came crimson, the kind of sky that warned blood would follow before the day was done. Thomas stood in the yard, his men lined behind him, rifles braced on fence rails. Clara lingered near the porch, her hands clenched at her apron, watching dust plumes thicken along the horizon. The riders were coming back, just as promised. The scarred man led them, a dozen strong this time. They reined up at the gate, faces hard with purpose. "Hail," he called. "Last chance. Hand her over. Debt's hers to pay. Don't make your ranch bleed for one woman." Thomas stepped forward, boots grinding into the dirt. His voice was steady, clear as a church bell. "This is my land. My people eat here, sleep here, work here. And she—" He glanced toward Clara, whose eyes shone wet in the morning light. "She cooks for them now, which makes her one of us." The scarred man sneered. "Then you'll all pay the price." He lifted his hand, but before it fell, Clara's voice rang out, sharp as a whip. "Wait!" She moved past Thomas, her apron flapping in the wind. "It's me you want. I'll go. Leave them out of it." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Clara!" But she turned, meeting his eyes. For the first time in 15 years, there was no pride, no running, only surrender. "I won't let you burn for my mistakes," she whispered. The scarred man chuckled, but Thomas's hand closed around Clara's arm, pulling her back behind him. He drew his revolver with the other. "You walk through that gate," he told the riders, "and you won't ride back." The yard froze in the long silence that followed. The riders shifted uneasily, seeing. The rifles braced, the men ready. Even outnumbered, the Hale crew stood like a wall of iron. At last, the scarred man spat into the dirt. "She ain't worth this trouble, but mark me, Hale, debt don't just vanish." With a jerk of his reins, he wheeled his horse, the others following. Their dust trailed off into the horizon, leaving only silence in their wake. The men exhaled, tension draining from their shoulders. Thomas holstered his revolver. Clara stood trembling, tears cutting through the dust on her cheeks. "You should have let me go," she whispered. Thomas looked at her a long time. "I already lost you once. I don't aim to do it again." Her breath caught, and for the first time since that broken wedding day, she smiled through her tears. Years later, when the Hale Ranch was spoken of, folks remembered not just the cattle or the strong fences, but the meals that never ran short. The cook who had once been a runaway bride. And on quiet evenings, Thomas would sit on the porch with Clara, lantern glowing between them, the sound of laughter carrying from the bunkhouse. The two of them side by side, silhouetted against the setting sun, a rocking chair creaking slow in the golden light.